Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The National Crime Agency has warned of a surge in modern slavery, with cases now affecting every large town and city in the country. It's launching a new operation to combat widespread increases in forced labour and sexual exploitation. It comes as new global research found that the UK has seen a slight increase in its level of risk of modern slavery compared to other countries. Well, the NCA's figures reveal there are currently 300 live policing operations targeting modern slavery. Between May and June, the NCA's Operation Aident led to 111 arrests in the UK, 40 arrests in mainland Europe, and 130 people identified as victims. Well, one group identified is suspected to have made around €5 million in criminal profits by allegedly trafficking young women across Europe.
This was a problem that's been going on for a number of years. It is a growth market in terms of organised criminality, who have realised that there are vulnerable people from whom these gangs and individuals can make a lot of money more quickly and with less risk than perhaps selling and distributing drugs. So I think there is a collective challenge to UK society about how it's responded to this problem. Law enforcement is part of that. I have to accept part of that challenge, but I don't accept that we're not doing enough to address it at the moment. It is a priority for policing and law enforcement. We are doing an awful lot of work to try and expose this crime, to identify the victims, to catch the offenders and put them before the courts.
We can talk now to our crime correspondent Martin Brunt, who's live at the NCA operation launch in central London. What are we, 2 centuries since the abolition of slavery, and the police now saying that modern-day slavery is a bigger problem than ever?
Yes, and growing, according to the National Crime Agency, who have come in for some criticism from the independent anti-slavery commissioner in the last few days for saying that the NCA was sitting on data and not pursuing it. Well, today we've had a bit of a fight back from the NCA. They have said that since January they've launched a surge of activity, but they make the point that this is a hidden crime. It's very difficult to get a precise idea of the numbers involved, but Will Kerr thinks that there are something in the region, well, tens of thousands is the figure he would put on the number of people who are living as modern slaves in the UK today, and that figure is growing. And a typical scenario, according to the NCA, is that somebody living in a poor country, Eastern Europe, parts of Africa, will see an advert that's put in a newspaper or TV by an organised crime group and are lured to the UK with the promise of free travel, a secure job and a much better life than the one they're experiencing. Now, in the first of a series of promotional films that the NCA is launching today, a woman who's not a slave herself but works as a carer in that field explains why so many of her fellow countrymen and women fall for these kind of advertisements.
My name is Elena and I grew up in Romania in the countryside. In the small villages there are few jobs and no money. So when a man arrives and offers presents to women and promising them a better life, it's very hard to say no. Often, they follow him to Bucharest and on to other places in Europe. By then, things are expensive and he will ask her, "I need you to earn some money." With no skills and languages, the women end up in sex work.
The NCA says that since it launched its surge of activity in January, there's a series of raids since then, a week each month of intensive activity and raids across the country. In one of those raids in the northeast, this is footage of that raid, 3 men were arrested, thought to be linked to a Romanian organised crime group that was trafficking men and women from Eastern Europe, principally from Romania. That's one of the countries that is at the forefront of this crime, according to the NCA. And that particular Romanian organised crime group is thought to have been making €5 million from human trafficking a month.
OK, Martin, thanks very much.
The National Crime Agency says modern slavery and people trafficking in the UK is a far larger problem than previously thought. It says victims are likely to be found anywhere from the high street to a farm. There are likely to be tens of thousands of them working in every large town and city. More than 300 police operations are currently targeting the criminals involved. In just 2 months this year, the National Crime Agency says there have been 111 arrests. Here's our social affairs correspondent, Dominic Casciani.
Another day, another anti-slavery operation. Over the last 6 months, the National Crime Agency has coordinated operations to smash trafficking and slavery gangs. This suspected brothel run in the northeast of England, just one of many that's been raided. Today, a new analysis from the agency suggests the true scale of modern slavery is far greater than previously suspected. Oral from Romania was coerced into hard labour. A gang controlled his life for 4 months until he got out.
It's just horrible, I tell you, it's just horrible. You cannot, and even now I just feel like my heart is start beating a little bit. I think that we cannot call them people.
Modern-day slaves are tricked into UK by gangs promising a better life and coerced into work they can't escape from. Women forced into prostitution make up to £600 a day. Men are trapped in gruelling work in food processing or agriculture. And victims are on the high street in nail bars and car washes. You're more likely than ever before to unwittingly come into contact with a victim. A cannabis farm in a suburban home, run by workers under the control of a gang. It's impossible to count all the victims because, like this enterprise, they're hidden from view. But investigators say the more they look, the more they find.
We've also seen people as young as 13 and 14 being sexually exploited and forced to engage in prostitution. That should worry us all. This is a growing problem for which we think there is a shared responsibility across society in the United Kingdom to address.
But critics say more could be done to identify trafficking. The UK's Anti-Slavery Commissioner has accused the NCA of acting too slowly on its own intelligence. Charities investigating abusers say there are obvious signs that someone is being held against their will.
Their passports are taken off them, they are forced to work against their will, they're held in squalid conditions, the trafficker controls their finances, controls their movement.
In the small villages, there are few jobs and no money.
A new online campaign from the National Crime Agency. It's pledging to carry on raids month after month, but investigators say they will still need the public's help to find all the victims.
And Dominic is with me now. A massive problem, as you've just said, Dominic. But do we know what's driving this trade?
I think, George, this is a story of our modern times. I mean, you'll recall from some of your travels how globalisation has transformed the way people move around the world. And of course, with that comes modern problems, modern crimes. And what's triggered a lot of the problems here in the UK is international crime gangs shifting from bog standard stuff like drugs into trading people, seeing them as commodities instead, because you can trade a drug once, but you can trade a person and use them time and time again and make far more money than ever before. One of the big issues, though, behind this is that critics say there are serious inconsistencies still in how some police forces investigate what's going on around the UK, and they want a more joined-up approach. The National Crime Agency says that it's doing what it can, and it's certainly a political priority still at the heart of government. Our Prime Minister and former Home Secretary made this a priority when she was at the Home Office. New laws are now in place, and I think the NCA's message today is now time to get tougher, but they do need the public's help in getting there.
Dominic, thank you very much.
I've been